discussion about the Sandbar Park Construction Management proposals. The town's reviewed the process of those proposals and a proposed selection, and that is going to be presented by Mary Harrington, the town's town engineer.
Hello everyone. Yes, so we are discussing the construction management proposals. To give you a timeline, we went out for proposal on December 23rd, so just before the holidays, and we solicited 7 local companies that provide construction management services. We received the proposals on January 14th. We got 2 proposals, Campus Construction Management and Krista Construction. For the review process, myself, Pat Stevens, the highway superintendent, and Matt Chatfield, who partners with the town with WIDA, reviewed the proposals individually, and then we met this Tuesday to review them together. We discussed them, and then we had a rating system in place, and the rating rubric followed exactly what the scoring criteria was in the RFP. So it was the project understanding, the proposed approach, technical and professional competence, similar experience, previous performance record, capacity and availability to perform the work, knowledge of the town, local office and staff, and then just 10% was for the proposed fee, because we like to ensure that the qualifications of the company is the main point for review. Sorry, these maths are so hard to talk through. Campus's proposal we thought was excellent. They clearly understood the scope, both the scope of being the construction manager on the job and also the project scope. They clearly did their research, and they must have reviewed documents on our webpage, because we didn't provide them the specs or drawings or any sort of supplementary information. We had identified challenges in the RFP, and they bulleted those challenges and discussed how they'd work through them as our construction manager. They are experienced in construction of play areas, parking lots, sidewalks, curbing, landscape, structural concrete, because they do so much school work. They also identified the challenges of all of our funding sources. I think that's going to be a big lift during the construction season. Just making sure that the different state grants are being reported correctly and that everything's itemized for what contract it's associated with. Their staffing was impressive. They were definitely quality people with a lot of experience, and it was nice that they didn't just give the resumes of their staff, they also showed how each staff member would be applied to this particular job. And they've got a good track record of success on tight timelines. They're used to working around school schedules and being successful. They're clearly excited about the project. You can tell the amount of effort that they put into the proposal. And existing clients speak very highly of them. We also thought that Krista put together a good proposal, but that it was more of a template proposal than something specific towards this project. It lacked a clear project understanding statement, and it didn't have a clear project approach for how they would apply their skills to this work. And it didn't have a lot of personalization in terms of Webster. I know they've worked with us in the past successfully, but it didn't really shine through in their proposal. And I think that the 2 projects that they did a lot of work on with us were heavily focused on buildings, and this is more of a site project. Their project team didn't seem to have the field inspection and record-keeping competence in comparison to campus construction, and they didn't really define what their administrative assistant was going to do, and they had proposed that person for a full-time position on the job, so we were kind of we couldn't really correlate what that effort was going towards in their proposal. I will note that neither construction manager has a robust history of DOT work, but I have reached out to campus, and they are working to get the required inspector that Monroe County DOT will require. We got that notice from Monroe County DOT about the requirement of a NISA inspector after the proposals came in, so it wasn't included in the RFP. But they have an action plan on how to address that. And then overall, we'll be paying for this professional service on an hourly basis. Campus is more expensive per hour, but they have fewer hours on the project, and their overall project cost came in at less. They were at $290,000, where Crystal was at $390,000. And I will say that there's still some negotiation going on with that budget, just because we are trying to problem solve this inspector that needs to be out there for the road work. For the project itself, I went back and looked at the budget, and we had a soft cost budget of $1.35 million for engineering and construction services. So to date, we've spent just over, I think the contracts for Passero and Bayer, who are doing the design, are around $550,000. So we're in a good place with that budget to award this contract, and then also the construction admin with the consultants during construction, and then the additional phases we should still have budget to work through phase 2 and the building and things like that. So budget looks good based on their cost proposals. So before I open it up to any questions, our next steps are for the town board to approve the award of contract. Next board meeting on February 3rd. We're looking, we're bidding out the construction project. The documents will go live on February 11th. So we're looking to get the construction manager on board as soon as possible so that they can do any cursory review of the documents before the addendum period is up for the construction bid, so that if there were any things that the town or the consultant didn't catch, we can incorporate any of their suggestions before the bids are opened.
Thank you, Gary. That was
Very
a
detailed.
lot. Yeah.
Certainly done
Yeah.
a great job in researching, interviewing, and it was a great report, so thanks for all your work. Pat, you too. Matt, you're out there, thank you.
Mary, the unknown of the inspector, will that add to the cost?
So they're proposing that the inspector that they had lined up to do the work during the road project would be replaced with this NISET level inspector, and then the potential for their project manager to be a little bit more hands-on, so that there's not any issue should their inspector come back on the project when the road is up. So that'll be kind of a seamless transition, and they'll have a steady team on the project throughout. So we have to see what those rates come in. I don't think, based on what the inspector rate was for their person who had 30 years of experience, I don't think it would be more than that individual, because it was, I would say, on the higher end of an inspector, but you got a lot of quality out of that. So I would think that it would be pretty close to a break even, but I'll definitely report back when I get hard numbers.
And their original quote for the inspector fees were included?
Yes, that was the 290.
Thank you.
So, yeah, they initially had, so they have a full-time inspector on site for the duration of the project. The Monroe County DOT requirement would be primarily for the work in there right away, so the road. At this time, we're only anticipating that that's one of the potentially 2 construction seasons. So when we brought up this part about the requirement for the inspector, campus's proposal was to essentially, instead of staffing it themselves for 2 seasons, use the inspector portion as the certified NISET inspector for 1 season, and then their own staff for the 2nd season, which allows the cost in their budget for the 1 season inspector to overlap. They just wouldn't necessarily, they would staff it with this inspector type person rather than their original proposal of staff. So just to make that clear, that essentially they're switching out a part that they already had included. That's why the dollar increase shouldn't be significant in any way. That was their proposal on how to handle it. We didn't really feed into that very much. We just threw it out there because it wasn't something that was included in either of the numbers. So that just to clarify how they were doing that, how, you know, the addition of another inspector could be absorbed. That was the approach that has been discussed so far.
And for those in the room and also watching at home, that was Pat Stevens, our highway superintendent. And Pat, do we have a nameplate for you?
I don't know, I was just told on my way in that if I'm gonna continue to be at.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get
probably
you a
get one.
nameplate, aren't we? Yeah, so this is,
Especially with the
yeah.
asking.
no incognito reporting at these board meetings.
Yes,
so,
sorry about that.
That's not a problem. Any other comments or questions by the board?
I know in past years ago, the county waived the NICET requirement if the inspector had the experience equal to or better than a NICET level inspector. So they may accept the individual once you submit it. So I don't know if that's changed. I know the county, a lot of people have changed there, so.
I think that's a great point. That's definitely something to look into. Like Mary mentioned, it was just sort of clarified from their point that that's what they require, so we are still working through that process, but we are working with them on that, with their representative, who's in the middle of finalizing these plans and all this stuff, so we can keep everything moving. So that's a great point, definitely something to discuss. The individual, as we said, that was proposed by the firm that we're recommending, certainly does have a high level, a number of years of experience in all this type of stuff. So that might be a very
And
good possible.
Paul Adams is in the room tonight, our finance director. I know you're not probably queued up on a camera or anything, but construction management, is that a professional service?
I would call it professional service, yes.
So I think by definition, the town board doesn't have to take the low bid on something like that.
That's correct.
And I think Mary did a wonderful job explaining that in the metrics that we used, you did put some weighting on price, but it was a very minor, I think 10% of your weighting. So where Canvas did come in $100,000 less at $290,000 versus $390 of Krista, that was not really the determining factor in your recommendation when Pat, you and Matt went through these.
That's correct. It was, the scoring, it wouldn't have changed who we thought was the better candidate based on that cost.
And I say that because, I think you did a very good job. As John said, it's about as thorough. The questions I had as you went through your presentation, I was like, oh, she's answering that, she's answering that. A week from today is when the board would actually make a resolution or decision on who to go forward with in construction management. So certainly Mary and Pat and Matt Chatfield, if you're out there, the work you've done to put the board in a position to make an informed decision next Thursday we're very thankful for that. And certainly to the board, if we have any questions for Mary, Pat, and Matt in the next 7 days, so that you feel better about what you vote on next week, certainly I think you'd be open to.
Yeah, I do have digital copies of both proposals, and I can share the scoring sheet that we came up with. So if any of you want to see that information, I
I'd
can
love
send
to.
that out. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions at this time?
No.
Okay.